and welcome to the New Property Show. I'm Steve McMenamin. On this show, Amol, our mortgage broker, will be discussing how to pay off your home much quicker. More with Gary on wealth creation. Kerry will be showing us the best tips on interior design. Our panel will be back, but first, Rory, something that's often overlooked, the review.
So what we've gone through in the past is we've set a goal, we've set a budget, we've set a plan in place, but this is the step that so many people miss out on, and that's the review. What we want to do is go back and check in and say, okay, how are we going? How are we tracking towards this goal? Maybe every month, just have a look. Have another look at your budget and say, are we actually on track to put that money away? Are we on track to pay down that debt? How are we actually looking? And is it the right plan? Should we go back to the plan and set a new one? But if you don't review it, a lot of the time, the best laid plans can just fall by the wayside and you don't pick up on ways that you can continue to improve. And this is really what sets the difference between someone who does this very, very well and someone who could absolutely do better. So if you set that goal and really have a deep think about what your goal should be financially. If you have a look at your budget, again, it's so important to know your numbers, know where your money's flowing. Set a plan, but be adaptable, know that that plan can change, because you're going to, and when you review it, you're going to pick up if that should happen. You do those 4 things, you are going to be in a far, far better financial position.
Amol, welcome back to the New Property Show. Thanks for joining us. This week we're going to cover tips and tricks with how to pay off your house a lot quicker.
Yeah.
We were discussing version A versus version B. Version A being the traditional method. How can mums and dads pay off their homes a lot quicker?
So it's important that we put strategies in place and it's not overwhelming to the clients as well. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we put some maths formulas and break it down so that it's not too daunting for the clients. So if your monthly repayment is say $3,000, if you're paying twice the amount per month, that's $6,000, you'll be paying off your mortgage in 9 years. So traditionally it's 30-year loan term, but you're paying off in 9 years. So similarly, if you are the second one, the second one is basically if you divide your, I say rule of 10. So if you divide your monthly repayment by 10 and pay that repayment extra per week. So for example, on a loan of $3,000, divided by 10, that's $300. So $300 every week if you pay into your loan, you halve your loan by 15 years. So you're able to reduce your mortgage by 15 years. Third one is one of the most important things that we discuss with the clients is changing your repayments to fortnightly instead of monthly. On monthly repayments, you make 12 payments per year, whereas on a fortnightly basis, it's 26 bi-weekly payments, and you are potentially paying 1 extra repayment per year. That reduces your loan by approximately 3 or 4 years. So if you're adding an extra repayment per month on top of it, you'll be able to reduce your loan to 15 to 16 years. Then it's using your offset accounts, redraw accounts. I've seen a lot of clients, they have just savings account and they don't use their offset accounts effectively. So whatever bonus you get, savings you have, just put it in your offset account or your redraw account. That will help you to pay off your loan faster. Fourth one is your credit cards. So use your credit cards smartly, and it comes with the financial clause. You have to pay off your card on the 1st of every month. But if you put all your expense on your credit card, potentially you will be saving 9 to 10 grand on interest over the life of 30 years. And then paying off your consumer loans. So consolidating all your debts. For example, if you have your personal loans or car loans, consolidate your debts, but continuing paying that $1,000 repayment towards your mortgage. And you'll be surprised about the amounts that you save.
It's really known as the snowball effect of working with the smallest debt sum.
Yep.
What about even if, say, the repayments were $3,000 per month and people round them up to $3,300 per month?
Yep.
really you just want to be tackling that interest components the first 5 to 10 years that get you.
Yep.
Then you really eat into your principal.
Yep.
What about recommendations like just selling off items as well, even household items around the home?
Yep.
Maybe a fifth option there, and just really tipping as much cash as you can into the property as well. So I guess if you really want to own your property a lot quicker, you could do that. Now, there is another strategy that we have discussed, and that's actually using debt in a good way.
Yep.
So instead of trying to get out of debt, really using the equity that you've created to create more debt, therefore buying investment properties. So can we have a look at that strategy as well?
Personally, I like the strategy and I personally use that. So when I purchased my house, within 6 months, I was able to access the equity and I was able to buy investment property. So buying your investment property in a good growth location, which has a decent positive get property, I was able to get access the equity 6 to 8 months down the line. In record 5 years, I was able to grow my portfolio to 9 properties. Now, let's take that example into consideration. So if you are able to actively buy the properties and considering that in a good growth locations, say in 10 to 15 years down the line, if the properties are doubling, even if you sell the first 5 properties, which potentially have doubled in value, you are able to not only kill off your owner-occupied debt, but potentially pay off your few investment debt as well. And you're setting up yourself for cash flow positive in future.
So really, let's go 10 years down the track. So if the client took that option, they've paid out their own existing home, now they've got some, I guess, some offset in terms of tax benefits there and some properties. What should be a comfortable amount that mum and dad should be aiming for cash flow positive properties per week to really consider leaving their job and becoming a contractor? I know there's a fine line there between retirement, but what do you say is a comfortable amount to live off per week nowadays? If you owned your own home, would $2,000 a week cover it? Is that still enough to live?
Given the costs are rising, I would say that $2,500 will be still a decent amount for a family of 4 to live comfortable life.
Okay. And what about people that have offset accounts as well? Do you recommend also for those people that do struggle, they do dip into the offset, having another type of bank account where the money might be locked up for 30, 60, 90 days, like a small term deposit? Is there any of those banks you want to touch on or recommend? I know there's some banking crises at the moment as well, but is there a couple of banks that you recommend if you just said, look, I just want to put my savings aside? Should they have like an ING or a robo account or something like that? Who would you pick?
I personally always tell my clients, go with the lenders who offer you multiple offset accounts. So you can just have one offset. You can have close to 10 offset accounts linked to your variable loan account. So you can basically create a everyday savings account or travel account, and in that way you're not going to touch your savings. Because the big 4 lenders, they'll just offer you one offset account and potentially you may end up accessing your savings. So it's always better to keep your savings and have multiple offset accounts linked to your owner-occupier. That helps you with that particular strategy.
One other strategy I'd just like to bring up with you as well is some people like to save first, or other people like to spend first and save what's left. What would you recommend is a fair amount to save out of a typical wage? Should you be aiming to save 10 or 20% of your own funds so that you've got a bit of breathing room? What's a comfortable amount?
It's always important to save first, and whatever amount is left, then you can have the discretionary spend so that you are financially disciplined and you can achieve your financial goal quicker. Okay,
so what I've heard today is one property at a time, acquiring more properties over 10 to 15 years, then paying down your properties by selling the first 4 or 5 properties. Or if you're just more of a conservative, spender, changing your repayments from monthly to fortnightly, even down to weekly. Is there any other money management tip that you would give to, the consumer out there watching? What should they get rid of? TABs, Uber Eats?
Absolutely. So I had a client who had Netflix, Amazon, all the different paid websites, and he hardly watched. So if you're not watching, don't just cancel all the subscriptions, and just be smart with your spending habits and have a budget in place and stick to your budget.
Beautiful. Amol, thank you for joining us on the Your Property Show. Great tips. Appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
When does property have GST? What things do we need to be aware about when it comes to property and GST? So the first thing is if we're talking about residential property or commercial properties. So we're going to talk about commercial properties. So we have a principle in commercial properties called ongoing concern. What that means is if we buy a commercial property and has a lease in place, it won't be subject to GST or may not be subject to GST. And if we buy it and it's vacant, it may be subject to GST. So each time when we're looking at a commercial property, there may be GST implications. If you do purchase a commercial property and it does have GST attached to the purchase price, you may be able to claim it in your next BAS. When it comes to new residential property, we've got to take into consideration if it is brand new, been built in the last 5 years, and this is the first time that property is being sold. So you might have been the purchaser who bought the land, did the build, you've lived in it for 4 years, and now you might be selling it for the first time. That may be considered as new residential property and may be subject to GST. So when you are selling residential property and it has been purchased and built in the last 5 years, I implore you to speak to your accountant to make sure you get the GST calculations correct. When it comes to the GST calculations, there's two different methods that we have. We have the standard method, where we divide the sale price by 11% and the cost by 11% to equal the net GST that may be payable. And we have the margin scheme method. Now, the margin scheme method is extremely complex, which requires special calculations to be done because not all of the cost base has GST attached to it. And because of that, I highly recommend you speak to an accountant or professional in the space to get that done correctly. The differences between the standard GST method and the margin scheme method will vary a lot. And it's well and truly worth investigating which method is going to suit your position best and which one's going to work for you.
Kerry, welcome to the new property show.
Thank you.
Interior design and decorating.
Yes.
Let's start with colours, inspiration, and what's in season.
Well, inspiration, I actually get my inspiration from nature. So I love when I walk along the beach and I see the colours of the sky and then the sunsets and you see all the beautiful tones through the sunsets. And then also even, when you're in the country and you see all the greenery. And that's how I sort of work with colours. And then what I do is I always have like a base of like a neutral base, and then I bring out all those colours. But I do love moody tones, so I love like the really rich navy blues, and I love the Copeland olive greens and some burgundies as well. They come up really nice styled.
Perfect. And you're typically working with like I guess on the walls, like a white coat on the outside, or people sometimes putting black in nowadays. So I guess that is also affected. But with the contrast, how far can you really go? Can you go sort of that dramatic black to white, or are you working in the middle there?
No, like the rule of thumb is that you work from a neutral base, and then you can bring some really strong colours in, like black colours from all your soft furnishings. But having like, your white walls, that adds space and it opens up a room. But then definitely you can bring in the dark tones. I mean, it's about creativity and, working out what really works with that space and the property being the demographic and all that sort of stuff. So you sort of got to put a lot of specifications when you actually are designing a space. So you've got to bring in colours and you've got to bring in, it's all variety of different things.
What about furniture? Because obviously sometimes people just have a must-have piece.
Yes.
So let's work with a living room.
Yeah.
Are you going to start with the colour palette first and then get the furniture second? Or do you do the furniture first and then the colour palette second? So how important is that?
We always start with the big pieces first.
Yep.
So always the big pieces. So if we're doing like a living room, working with the sofas and the armchairs and the rugs. And then we bring in the art is really important. And whatever art that we use, we take out the colours of the art and we put them with the cushions and the throws. And then that's what brings the whole room together.
Perfect. So there'd be really a few parts to your process. Obviously there's going to be, talk us through, there's a design brief.
Yes.
Then there's a next step, and then there's going to be a finale.
Yes.
What's the most exciting part of it, and what would those processes look like?
Yeah, so there's aspects. So if I'm private styling, that's another aspect. But if I'm property styling, so if I'm styling to sell, I think the best I mean, the best aspect is you get to see the finish,
Yeah.
and the finish looks insane. And, you know, we have the clients, they don't want to sell their house after we've styled it. They're just like, wow, and their faces. So it's a very rewarding job because they don't realise that having it professionally styled, it just takes it to another level. It gets buyers in the door because it looks fantastic on the website. And just people just fall in love with it, and tells a story to buyers as well.
Have you been at auctions where you've actually seen a price go up and know that it's a direct result of what you've done to the property?
Yeah, I sneak around on Saturdays
Yeah.
to the auctions all the time, and I also walk in and follow potential buyers, and I hear what they say, and it's actually rewarding. They go, wow, that's beautiful. I would have never thought to put that dining chair with that table. And yeah, so I do, it definitely has a big reflection on the sale of the house.
And what would customers expect to pay? Say, for example, if they were just looking to style to sell,
Yeah.
is that normally a 90-day lease that you'd look at? So you're going to style the property for 90 days and then
Yeah.
review it. So obviously everything's leased, is that right? Or?
Correct, yeah.
Yep.
So it's hired, it's hired furniture, and then we always give like a 6 to 8 week turnaround time, just so it covers the campaign.
Yep.
And then obviously if there's any cooling off, we like to give them some extra weeks there. So it's like a 6 week campaign. It's a great process. We come in, it's very streamlined. We meet the client, we give them a brief. We also have to educate the client that we're not actually styling to their taste. We actually are styling for the majority. And sometimes, they've got their own taste, like they might want, leather couches, but some leather couches are bulky, so you really can't put that in a room if you want to showcase the space and how wide it is. So,
Okay, and what about clients that are private clients? So they've purchased a brand new home. Budget-wise, I've heard of some examples when we've spoken before. We've spent a few $100,000 with people, which would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Maybe first of all, what's the most expensive piece you've ever bought, like an art piece or a piece of furniture?
Yeah.
And then secondary, what's a lower end tier client through to a higher tier client look like? What are they spending with you?
Okay, so for private styling, look, obviously it depends on the size of the house. I'm currently doing one at the moment. It's a $10 million property in Brighton. Stunning. And like I've just spent, $50,000 just on a 3-seater sofa. And then we have just bought some beautiful pieces of art, and, they're really good pieces of art. So, you're looking at like $100,000 and stuff. So it's very... For high-end properties, you have to put in high-end furniture. But then just for the, the one-bedroom apartment, say, you don't have to go to that level, but you still got to put in nice quality pieces, and then you can sort of take your budget down just with some soft furnishings and throws and things like that.
What are some of the, the advantages of having a interior designer versus just trying to go to spend a whole weekend shopping around at DFOs and Harvey Normans and looking for yourself?
Yeah.
Why would you have someone like yourself versus do it yourself? Or could you sort of mix the two up?
Look, I like to work with my client.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing a private styling, I definitely want to work with my client. The thing is, hiring a professional stylist, you're not wasting your money, because if you go shopping on your own and you don't have that eye, you're actually buying all different pieces, and then you put it together and it's just not right. It's not right. Whereas when you hire a professional, what you do is we can mood board it all up for them. So therefore we show the pieces, they like the pieces, and then we can put in a mood board, so visually they can actually see what it's going to look like. And so therefore they're not wasting money. They're having it, they're buying good quality pieces. They know it's going to fit the room. They know it's all been measured. And when we go in, it just looks perfect. So it's definitely
with a,
the way to go.
with a mood board, have you got a couple of clients where they say, look, I want to see 3 examples of a mood board? So like a moderate, something very aggressive, and then something light. Have you been asked to do that before? Like 3 mood boards at once, completely contradictory to each other?
Well, I just did a beautiful formal dining room, and in that dining room, we couldn't. The client liked 4 pieces of art, so it was great. I was just able to just put that art and give her 4 looks with the 4 different pieces of art. So visually, she could see what it's going to look like, and then she went, "That's the one I want." So. Yeah, it's definitely the way to go, putting it on a mood board and then making sure that all the colours work together in that space.
Perfect. And what's the most spoken about space at the moment? Where are people really focusing, their time and their energy?
Master bedrooms. Yeah, I mean, obviously your master bedroom needs to be a place where it's cosy and it's luxe, but you know, that I'm seeing, you know, beautiful big luxe bed heads, and then I'm seeing great side tables and, you know, beautiful marble tops and big grand lamps, and, you know, a lot of people are also putting a nice armchair in a corner, and they're actually making their master bedroom like a part of their retreat. So I think it's really important to focus on your master bedroom, but definitely in fashion at the moment.
So for any of our viewers watching that haven't engaged your services, where would you recommend going to get a bargain nowadays, and where would be the best place to start? Should you go online, or should you really just start going to some outlets and shopping?
Yeah, I definitely think with pieces that you have to visually go and see them and sit down on, you know, sofas and sit down on your dining chairs, because they've got to be comfortable, especially if you're buying the furniture because it's going to be with you for quite a few years. You want it to be, you know, to fit your taste and your size as well. So 100% sit, touch, feel. And then I also think definitely the outlets and go there. They have some great sales. The suppliers, like you can get 50% off on a lot of the stock these days. So you've just got to keep your eye open on what the suppliers and when their sales are on, because they do happen.
If we did engage your services, can you obviously shop on behalf? You've got some great deals. And the other thing too would be, if you don't like a piece, you can typically return it. So you can you have a piece delivered to the house, test it out, and then return it if it doesn't work, or how does that work?
Yeah, I don't like to do that. I like to test it out to make sure it's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, being a perfectionist, you know, when someone engages my services and then I buy for them, when we style it, looks fantastic, the last thing I want to do is take it back to the shop, do you know what I mean? Because then I've disappointed my client. So definitely we always try things first before we actually buy it. But, you know, obviously trade, I'm in the trade, so I get looked after as well. So it's a benefit for the clients to actually use me, because I can also give them great discounts of what they couldn't actually get if they didn't use a professional stylist.
The other thing too is, I guess, that the last day, the handover.
Yes.
How many people are normally on board the finale?
Yeah.
To get this thing done? It's obviously.
It's all systems go.
Yeah.
So you think about it, you know, in the morning you're loading up the truck. You've got the boys loading up the truck, and then you've got we get there, and then we've got you know, buckets and all the girls and all the guys coming in with furniture. So it's a big process. So we also don't want the clients to be there, because obviously we need the space and we don't want to get distracted as well. So we're on a mission. And then also we want them to have a surprise. So, you know, when they walk in and they go, wow, I love that feeling. It's fantastic.
I think that'd be the best part of the job, really, is the handover.
Yeah, it is.
Kerry, I want to thank you for being on the New Property Show today. You've been fantastic. Can't wait to see some of the visuals.
Yes.
And we look forward to having you back again soon.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, welcome back, panel. This week's topic is processes, but most importantly, who is more important? Who comes first in the building? So we have an accountant, an architect, a finance broker, and credit repair. Where do we start? Customer. Customers walking in, they're thinking about building a new home. Who should they see first?
Me.
I personally feel that structure is very important. So accountant will be the first person. They need to talk, followed by a broker. You need to get your finance sorted out. If your credit is not great, potentially credit repair. And once everything is sorted, then the architect.
How do you know how much you're spending if you haven't first spoken to the architect and got a design? Are you talking
so
about
broker,
setting up the...
Yeah, broker will be the
how
one.
much can you borrow?
Exactly.
So we don't kill the dream too early. Yeah.
I think too really does start with vision. Sometimes it's important to know the numbers, but if you don't have the desire, what's going to really fuel that? So I think sometimes visually, maybe working with, I think the thing that really gets a new home started is the dream of owning the brand new home. So in this case, I'd almost go to the architect or the design, the inspiration, and then work backwards, reverse engineer it. But I guess without yourself, if you don't have the credit, would be it. So where do you think you'd come into play with having a customer?
Sure.
What part would they play, and then how would you relate it back to these guys here on the panel?
Well, I guess clients come to us from different sources and people. So, but what we often see is it goes hand in hand with your finance representative. So, your mortgage broker, your financial planner, your accountant. So, it's all good to have a goal and a vision. But if that vision can't be fulfilled because you have something that needs to be rectified before you can take that next step in the process, then that's where your credit comes in to be able to rectify it so they can move forward towards the dream of working with yourself.
Yeah.
And Gary, you've worked with, I guess, both new properties and second-hand properties. How important do you think that getting the numbers right and obviously sitting down with their accountant and having a regular review with where they're at? Is that an important part of the process? I mean, you don't want to see people overspending either.
Yeah, I think I believe the most important part would be speaking to the accountant first, because the accountant will come back to the client and give a realistic budget in mind. They can use that budget, go back to the mortgage broker, make sure that's going to work, go back to the architect, make sure that's going to work, and to speak to, if they've got bad credit, then a credit expert. But first starting off with that, because if you don't have your tax returns done, if you've got ATO debt outstanding, if you've got some hurdles that you need to fix there, you need to fix it first before investing money into designs, investing time and energy into a broker. And most accountants will know from the get-go, okay, these are the 5 things you need to do. You need to have a budget, you need to have your ATO stuff all cleared up, make sure you're not overspending, and they'll have a few things worked out. So you can save some time, energy by doing that first.
Only thing I'd probably counter that with is you're pretty passionate about property. But
go to your right accountant.
Correct. Because we've done deals before and the accountant's against a deal. And that may be because they haven't purchased a property before or been through that process themselves. So I think the right advice is also key. And I think ideally, as a customer, we've got 4 people sitting in this panel here, but having 2 people on your side. I think the team is probably where the communication is. So I think having the accountant talking to the broker, credit talking to the broker, and obviously making sure the price is right to go back to the accountant. So would you find that it would come up sometimes that you're going to challenge the numbers that you might see under a tender or a contract? Have you gone through and then challenge where something might be too expensive?
Yeah. Again, it depends on the type of accountant that you engage in. That may be a service that they look at or to support a client with. And because of my property experience in the past, it's something that we look at and go, well, is that an expensive build? Should you be doing that type of build? Is it for investment property or lifestyle? And for me personally, when I've done some of my builds, I've gone back to the architect and designer and said, hey, let's scope this back a little bit. I don't need that type of flooring, I just need flooring. So it just depends. But again, it goes back to what you're trying to look for. I know when I do a house renovation, it'll be different to when I'm building an investment property.
I think too, it depends on the process that you're looking at, and obviously we'll just focus on new homes. But if you already own an existing home, you know your credit's okay, you know you can borrow, then really where it comes into play is really yourself, is really just drawing up the concept, because it doesn't always have to be executed straight away. So how often do you get people come to you, they're prepared to spend money, but they may not do their renovation for a year or 2?
Well, there's also options within that as well. So you can still design the whole design, but maybe stage it. And that's something that is a lesson learned from large projects. When you have a larger development, it often is staged because there's no way people can get construction teams on multiple parts doing many things all at once. But in a renovation, you can look at it the same way. Like maybe you are just going to do the kitchen and bathroom because those are the most used areas of the home, and you start with that. And then if you're wanting to do an extension and add on, that might be something that you prepare for, and then they could finance for or be saving for and working it out with the rest of the team. And we can just sit there in a bit of a holding pattern and know that we're getting the council approvals and all of those things are ready to go, but they may not necessarily be going to build it straight away.
What I'm getting the most out of from all the comments is the consensus is there's a process, but there's a team behind the process to give that result back to the client so they can get a good, because I think it's about the journey, i.e. the process, as much as about the destination.
Yeah, and some of that stuff, like what you were talking about as well, is a whole value management process that you can go through as well. And that's where I would come in as a layer to the original design intent, and without stripping away that design intent and kind of killing the creative process, because that would take the joy out of it for the client, but also myself working on it for them, is I want to keep the vision alive, but we also understand that people have realistic budgets in mind, and there are areas where you can spend and save, and something like flooring, I can then go out and search for substitute options that I could bring to you that will look very, very similar, and it's going to give you the same outcome, but it really just fits straight back into that budget. And you could be saving hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even just a couple of thousands of dollars that can go somewhere else, or simply just not be spent at all. Yeah.
So with that said, I guess, Emma, I'll start with you. If you were to pick 3 people to be on your team, doesn't have to be the guys here, but who are the 3 people, if you're doing, let's talk reno, we'll talk renovation. Who are the 3 people you need on your team to make sure that project is off the ground and gets built?
Yeah, I mean, a great builder who is passionate about creating a good outcome. I definitely don't enjoy when I'm on a team and people kind of are stonewalling the outcome. You want to work with other people who, we are in a creative industry, and you want to be surrounded by people that are really good at problem solving and they have really good solutions, because every project is different and every project's going to have its unique set of problems, and you need people who really enjoy that and they want to tackle it and not just throw it in the too hard basket. I would also say having a really good QS who can do that kind of value piece, which is potentially someone you guys might be speaking to, and that quantity surveyor is going to be able to come through and assess every little bit and piece of all the quotes, and even when the tenders come back, to kind of give, again, an overview and an opinion. And also just a really good client who's willing to go on that journey, and they need to be prepared for taking in some of that information, but it's also our job to be able to educate them and bring them along on the process, because the last thing you need is to kind of go, great, we're going to do a house, and they feel completely left out, and then they'll start kind of questioning the fees or questioning the process and kind of not understanding.
I think that's an excellent answer. I think obviously most importantly the client, if the client's not willing or able or doesn't want to fulfil what your vision is, it's not their home anymore. All right, what about yourself?
Adding to that, I would probably say another one would be a good draftsman to be on the journey, working hand in hand with the builder, who probably understands the council approval process of their respective development area. So making sure that that vision can come to fruition, but at the same time avoiding pitfalls where going into more financial strife, or trying to cut back on certain things, and make sure you don't trip, if you will, to safeguard them.
Well,
we're looking at the end steps. For the first step, as I said, accountants, brokers are the first starting points. Those are the 2 important people, and followed by your builders and all the people that they have mentioned.
Perfect. And Gary?
Look, let's say that you get the finance and stuff all sorted. I think then the most important people are the builders, and having the right builder, architect in place. So you don't want someone that does 100 homes a year, mass builder. You want someone that's going to take the time and energy to design, to design the renovation how you want it to be designed to make it feel like a home, and you want a builder that can execute on that. Again, if it's a house renovation for you to live in, opposed to an investment property.
I think the other thing that we'd probably also reverse engineering, and we'll say this word lightly, but real estate agent. Because sometimes you could overcapitalise on an area. So I think you'd look, as a wider frame, you'd look at neighbourhood characteristics, proximity to schools, and of course what's going to be popular in that area. So is it more bedrooms versus living areas? It's probably some of the things that might be considered in the design brief. But if it's a 5-year turnaround, you would treat it as an investment. If it's a 10 to 15 year, I guess, time frame, a family home, then it doesn't really seem to matter as much. So I'd pick a good real estate agent that's familiar with that area, that's sold in that area, because I would be asking him or her that question, is how do I get the most value out of the renovation that I'm doing, and what seems to be very popular in terms of the facades and the finishes around here as well. Guys, that's a really good debate today. Thank you for being on the New Property Show, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks
everyone. Thank you.
That's all for this week, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week.